All right, everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I am once again joined by the handsome and courageous Sai.
This is the handsome and courageous Sai, and I'm joining the equally handsome and courageous Lucid for another turn.
It's turn 68, I believe. And if you missed last episode, we had one of the cooler battles this game between Vettihheim and Gath. And spoiler, so go watch it if you don't want it to be spoiled.
Yeah, I would
But
say if you
Gath,
haven't watched last episode, just go back and watch it because that was a really, really good fight.
yeah. Spoiler is Gath mopped the floor with Vettihheim's army. And it was a pretty well script. I mean, there are nitpicks, there could have been more Evo bait, and maybe he could have spaced some of them out so they didn't all get gifts of heaven. Because there was some hint that would be happening. We didn't know the gems in turn one, but we knew there was going to be a lot of gifts of heaven. So he could have maybe not done one blob. But aside from that, it was a pretty well scripted Vettihheim army, and it got put down.
And it really came down to the fact that Gath was both set up to specifically counter this point buff strategy and brought significantly more mage turns to the fight. So, while he might not have been significantly far ahead on gold, he had just a pile of these crystal mages, those slow to recruit throne mages, and those were responsible for a huge portion of his victory in that fight.
Yeah, and there were a lot of things like Vettihheim was doing. The kind of the Vettihheim thing is to pack a lot of value per tile, right? You put these really nice sacreds in there, you buff them up, you spend a lot of mage turns buffing that tile up, and then they run in and fight. And Gath had a lot of things which destroy tiles. They had Gifts of Heaven, which is going to just delete an entire tile, and they had Petrify, which is going to disable an entire tile. And those two things, combined with Wailing Winds, making the Vettihheim Mage Corps run away, it was just a wipe. So let's see what Gath has to say about this. The big battle last turn was obviously very good for me and caused a whole lot of discussion in the game chat, revealing people's thoughts and intentions. Based on that, I know that Vetti was mostly attacking Arethyia because of his grudges rather than accumulating gems for something like Vengeful Water. Interestingly, but when was Vettihheim actually attacking Arethyia?
He was dropping on them with the statue.
Oh, yeah. Rather than... Okay, I thought he was just getting paid off. And Arethyia had... Didn't Arethyia gem baited Vettihheim at some point?
Yeah, Arethyia had done that in the last war.
Right.
But I don't think that... Or I would assume that they had gotten at least some payment for those drops.
Yeah, I think they did. But, I think that just goes into, Arethyia has been completely shut down as a nation by Vettihheim's god. And in some ways, it could have all been from them being, accepting the bribe to gym bait them that one time pissed them off. So it's you think, oh, it's 20 gems or 30 gems I'm getting for a gym bait. That's pretty cheap. Might not be. Interestingly, in this game, when I expect and plan big battles and can't sleep due to anxiety, nothing happens. But when I sleep well assured that Vortex of Returning is the play, I awake to see battles like this one.
Well, he was clearly set up for a big battle, even if he had, been assuming that it was going to get baited and ran away from.
Yeah. Obviously, I predicted the strategic moves wrong, but 19 gem-powered gifts that we deliberately prepared a turn before became the thing that turned a likely bloody victory into an almost flawless one. The Vetti players are sure that without gifts turn one, they would have won with Darkness, and I don't think Darkness came out that fight.
Nope.
Mist and Will of Fates. Will of Fates I do think went off.
Yes, but late.
And Darkness and Mist would have mattered, but there's still a bunch of Seir, and the stat penalty won't matter if you're petrified, but maybe
so the thing with Darkness and Mist is mostly just what he's talking about there is that it disrupts the gifts casters so that
that's true.
Evo goes further off. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, petrify's 100 precision though, so at least that'll keep hitting.
Yeah, but what he's talking about, or what Gath is talking about there, is that you can kind of counter gift through a combination of those three spells, but you could, because between all of them, you're functionally reducing enemy precision by 10, and then also avoiding 3/4 of the shots. So if they're off by 10 squares every time that they shoot, and 3/4 of them aren't lethal, then you're in a much better place than that round one where it was all landing in the center of that blob.
Yeah. Yeah. That was pretty devastating. I mean, I think to go with it, if Vettiheim had just spread their stuff out more enough so that you could still get weapons of sharpness on things you cared about, that would have been helpful. Anyway, the most important casters and items escaped, including Illirth, who was getting very low several times, but the Shed artillery didn't manage to finish him off. We only found cheap items after the fight. Rings of Wizardry was lost for good. Such a waste. Now what next? We may try to pursue and finish off Vettiheim escapees with the HH... Oh, wait, what's that? And the other...
I actually don't know.
With the HH and other plays, we may let them go because it's quite risky and the benefits are very questionable. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Horde from Hell?
Yeah, that's probably it, because that's the magic phase attack.
Yeah, okay. We were discussing... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I've only ever seen Horde from Hell abbreviated as HFH, but
yeah,
technically he's right, actually. He is in fact talking about Horde from Hell, with most phrases, if you're making an acronym, you drop the transitive words like from or of. So, yeah.
We were discussing this for almost 2 days and decided to take Utgard with our large stack and only then move forward towards the throne, because the most logical play for Vettiheim now is to lick his wounds and concentrate stuff in a cap defense, which is not part of our share anyway. It's unlikely he will hard defend the throne, and taking it a few turns later doesn't matter much. Illwinter is also not so huge a concern anymore, since nobody is getting relatively more powerful because of it. All this means
Pan has less of an income penalty because they're very temperature neutral, whereas Gath has a heat preference.
Yeah. Is Gath heat 2 or heat 1?
I think just heat 1. But,
yeah, that's what I thought too. All this means, unless I'm drastically wrong with predictions again, that some peaceful development is in order. I almost stopped production of everything that increases upkeep and is not unique or blood hunters, a terrible downside of not losing stuff in battles, because income is going to be even lower soon, and I'm focusing on temples and forts instead. Strong Dominion will be important for super late game plays, no matter what those will be, and while forts are required for protecting important spots, and obviously money, 3 red seconds is also a consideration for a bit later, because even at no discount, they're cheaper in gold and faster to make than giant citadels. P.S. One thing I learned to absolutely love about this nation is that after a battle where 1 million units were crippled, diseased, and blinded, with enough micro, every one relevant can be back to perfect health in several turns.
Yeah, the healer units are really good.
Yeah. P.S. Look at Pan's Lich. I want to be strong in Hall of Fame. I assume this is the guy doing
the sickle thing.
The gem. Yeah.
Death Prophet, and then I want to be strong. Yeah. So when you are doing this sort of farming, you can kind of cycle in to farm Hall of Fame slots, because everyone who's doing the gem farming is guaranteed to get into the Hall of Fame after only like 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely done that in a game. It's kind of funny. It's easier to do if you're not doing it on liches. You got some National Death Mage.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with liches, you might not have enough liches to actually fill up the whole Hall of Fame. But with other mages, you can.
Oh, I see. But yeah, with the single farm, you always will get enough liches.
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, you could do it. Okay.
Let's look at the TG. Yeah.
TG message from Latch. No devastating magic attacks so far. Not sure why. We did get hit by Manifestation, which almost killed our golem, so that would have sucked. Orethia seems determined to fight us on a budget, or he just does not care about our armies that much, which is also easy for me to believe. On the Pan side, I have a little ambush planned down south. I doubt Pan will fall for it. Either way, I think we'll make some progress, but we'll see. On the north, we're going to wait for a turn for gear, then try some small attrition plans against his Doom stack, or Magic Phase Raiders off forts maybe. We almost have Thaumaturgy 7. It would be pretty fun to do a Paths of Death Cube play.
He's talking about Stygian Pass.
Okay. To jump a small army on the Magic Phase through, though I highly doubt that will happen or be worth it. I have some ideas about what we could do about his armies, but it remains to be seen if they work. I'm doing a rather risky move, consolidating all my mages into one fort, because if he magic phase attacks the fort, then comes in with his army, he will likely take out a few of them. But oh well. Yeah. So he's talking about like when you're moving things into a fort, normally it's safe. But if something conquers the fort in the magic phase, then they'll own the fort, and the mages who are moving in won't be able to like hide inside the fort walls. It'll cause a battle.
Right. So you can get your major reinforcement picked off.
Right. The thing you often want to do if you're doing that is you script the mages going into the fort to retreat. And that way...
Yeah, they have a 50% chance of retreating inside before it does any other retreat checks. So the majority of mages, when you're fighting like outside of a fort that you control that's under siege, will retreat inside of the fort.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you do that, if they don't magic phase on the fort, obviously there's no battle. And if they do, well, then your mages run in the fort. Okay. He'll likely take a few of them, but oh well, we cannot afford to be spread out and unable to set up a third battle if it comes to it. I'll deal with the Gartha later if we somehow have the forces left over. I also want to go a little bit more on my read of our position. Basically, I think if we focus defense, shed a good deal of land, and probably a throne, we could hold out for a very long time, but we would never win. We are pretty strong as a nation, but the other players holding a ton of Gem Gen globals and blood powers getting really far into the late game power. Our positions will only get worse as time marches on. Zabalba is busting out Dark Vines, which we simply cannot face in mass, and Gath was already a matchup we probably couldn't face one-on-one before this war started. And Arethian Pan, despite Pan's insistence to the contrary, I assume have far stronger gym economies than us at this point, thanks to globals. I'm also pretty sure that both Gath and Zabalba are going to come at me once they're done with Vettihheim. Well, yeah, I mean, Gath is pretty much done now.
Yeah. Gath could probably just move through Vettihheim to attack TNG.
Right. If we're still alive enough to border them, that is. As we have always said, we're in the game to have battles, not to win. So we'll still try to be tryhards and try to win, but mostly I do not like to play to try to stay alive. I've been there, done that, and it's not for me. So instead of trying to weather this storm and look for a chance later, like last year, where the economic outlook was not as bad, we're going to keep smashing our faces into the wall and see if we can make a breakthrough and hope something lucky happens to take the heat off, like Zabalba going for a throne rush.
Yeah, Zabalba can't throne rush, so that's out of the question.
Yeah.
But I actually agree with TNG's perspective in that I have a very similar style in that I never want to play for second place. So I'm always trying to find a way to come out of a war not just like surviving it and like negotiating myself into like being a pet, but only to win. So like if you think that there is a way to win enough battles to come out on top and actually gain territory and put yourself in a position where you're still a contender, then I think that it makes sense to go for that, even if it's like a 5% chance. So like I completely agree with TNG's like stance of like, let's take the 1% chance of victory over the 10% chance of just staying alive.
Yeah. I like that too. I have a caveat there, which is I think like to me, I want to improve my game state as much as I can every turn. So if the only options are bad, like I'll give up land to get out of a war, but I won't give up so much land to get out of the war that I'm not going to be relevant or not be of a size where I can get it back.
So I think that the reason that TNG is not willing to make that sort of trade-off is that from their perspective, in order for them to win at all, in order to match what they pursue as being bigger gem economies of Pangaea and Erythea and the blood economies of Gath and Xibalba, they need to be at this larger size. And if they fall back, if they start bleeding territory, even just like, a reasonable amount, then they're no longer in contention for actually winning the game. And I think that's actually true.
I think yes, but I think it also misses the point. I think that, TNG, I think they've had a major diplomacy failure
Well, their major diplomacy failure, I think, is unrelated to their current focus on trying to take territory or take and keep territory.
Well, I think it kind of does, because we're talking about, should you give up land or should you fight for it? Should you give up land or should you fight for it? Well, it depends, right? What are you giving it up for? Are you giving it up to have the foundation of like a long-term, friendly relationship where you're going to work with somebody to like take down some threat? So what I mean by this is like, if TNG and Erythea realize that like, hey, this pan-Gath axis is like really scary, we need to do something about it, then that could be the foundation for like, hey, like, let's be friends, let's come to some agreement, and then like forge ahead. But if it's like,
Well, I agree with that. I just don't
yeah,
think that. I think that their strategy in terms of like their war is actually valid, even if their diplomacy has failed. But the diplomacy had already kind of broken down, from my understanding previously, in that Erythea is in this war and like even broken out to be in this war because of the previous diplomatic breakdown.
right,
And
yeah,
I don't
no,
see
that's
that as
fair.
being salvageable. If someone is like so mad at you that they're willing to break a nap in order to attack you, then you're probably not going to be able to create like an alliance with them.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I think without like a Zabalba TNG Erythea alliance, I would say the odds of any of them winning the game are like, I think their combined chance is like 10%.
Yeah, and we talked about this at the very end of the last
Yeah,
episode, in that I think that Pan and Gath are already in a position to take on the world, but
yeah,
the relationship between TNG and Erythea, I think, is insalvageable.
I think you're right. And so in those cases, it is sometimes good to just, and it's like, if they came to an agreement, would you really trust them? I've played with John Hito a lot. I've never heard of him breaking a nap before, but that doesn't mean he hasn't done it. But yeah,
But
I
he
don't
was
know.
also specifically very mad at
He
TNG.
was very mad. Yeah. So it's possible they repair that. But the other thing is that there may be, we had a fort switch hands between Erythea and Pan. There's no troops on their border. Like, this is a completely demilitarized border. To me, this suggests like deep coordination, cooperation. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think WarpPC has done just a much better job of coordinating his alliances
yeah,
than TNG, and I think that that's showing that, like, yes, Pangea has done some amazing scripts, right? Like that
yeah,
initial point buff strategy was beautiful. The Gift from Heaven stuff was great. The fact that he figured out how to abuse double rigor was great. Like, he's done some very, very good scripting. But I would also say that a large portion of his success is due to his diplomacy. That he's just like, you know, navigated this game very well, in that pretty much everyone seems to have a high opinion of him, and he has a dedicated ally.
yeah. Yeah, he's done pretty masterfully there. Is this going to work? That works. Starfire's fort storming. Hello.
I think that was just a ping that happened to work.
Yeah. That's what you and I were saying is the right way to do it.
Yeah,
You
you send a minimal ping that can beat
minimal
the fort
ping that
defense.
could beat the fort defense. So this was supposed to be a trap. It's definitely triggered gem use. The Ravenous Swarm. So I wonder, is there like a Lich or something in here?
I don't see any undead on. Oh, there's a
No.
vampire lord.
Oh! The Gifts of Heaven are targeting some of the bugs which are nearby.
But most of them are targeting the TNG stuff.
Yeah.
And the Thunder Specs are also working out well. This is part of why I like Centaur Sages so much, that they have just this versatile evocation.
Yeah. They're pretty good. I don't think there were gems on these guys. Wait, was there a Lich here?
On Pangea's side.
Oh, there was. Okay, cool. So this guy's got a couple gems and a boots. So he didn't really lose anything. I think.
This was definitely intended to be a gem bait. It's yeah. It's
How
hard
many
to
gems
gem
did
bait
these guys
cheaply.
spend? Oh, these guys can do creeping doom with. Oh no, these were temp gem items.
Yeah, but he did kill the Lich with the Ravenous Swarm, and there was one of the pans that used a real gem. Although, that's hardly a expensive loss.
So yeah, I think this is, Panji is going to take this in stride, not really mind that at all.
Yeah, I would say he actually came out ahead in terms of because TNT lost 2 real mages and spent a couple gems himself, Pangea spent 1 nature gem and lost a Lich who's going to come right back because he's immortal and got, 5 extra
Yeah.
troops.
Yeah, this is a good TNG trade. Now, it did cost him 106 mage turns, but he's done with research, so.
We'll check the research graph, actually. Is he totally finished?
I'm pretty sure he's done, yeah.
Yeah, he's finished. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, this was the first turn that it was finished, but you could see they were S-curving over where they weren't really too concerned about finishing the last bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so Pangea's actually going to get really scary now because every single Centaur Sage can be out on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. And especially if he gets up Nexus or something, it's going to be... Like, once he actually starts having armies behind these Centaur Sages, it's going to be crazy. Like, gym-powered armies.
Yeah, that's kind of been what we've been criticizing from Pangea, is that he doesn't have those, like, doom stacks. But it turns out if you just put 120 Gifts from Heaven spammers in an army, you don't need to spend that many gems.
That's right. Apparently, it just fixes itself. Damn. Okay. And of course, like, we're looking at this now. Later in the game, this could be enormous master and slave communions and stuff like that. Like, just crazy powerful things. So, the breakpoints are powers of 2. So it's like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And it'll be pretty easy for these to hit 64, which is, isn't that power of, is that 2 to the...
That's 8.
8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 is 1, 4 is 2, 8 is 3, 16 is 4, 32 is... Oh, no, it's 6. Sorry, 6.
It's 6. Okay. So basically, a Centaur Sage with a Starshine Skullcap and a Crystal Coin could cast Master and Slave.
Yeah, he can spam it.
So he could spam it. And he could put pin boosters on him too if he wanted to really be fancy. But like even basic pin boosters, like, well, no, and they could also do Power of the Spheres, right? So it could be like, and Light of the Northern Star. So they could be +2 in terms of paths. So that's a 1 pin. And then
and then you could very cheaply get an additional +2 pen or +3 pen from Void Eye and the luck thingy, the fake luck.
Yeah. The what is that thing called? I can't remember.
Very easily spam Master and Slave if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or just the other thing though is that the trade-off between doing Master and Slave and Retail and Slave at a higher pen value starts to become questionable when you have that many mages, right? Because like if you're casting just like regular Enslave 50 times in a turn, that's pretty comparable to casting Master Enslave.
Yeah, but I guess part of what I'm thinking about is like we're thinking like deep late game he's fighting Gath. Like if there's gonna be 6 master like pin boosted Master and Slave casts, Seer, Arco and I were actually talking about this. Seer actually have some of the worst MR of all the demon summons. They are only
Marvelous.
Yeah, do we have any Gath battles here where I can show you? Does Gath have an MR Bliss?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. I think it's either 13 or 14 for their. I think it's 13. I think Aussies are 1 higher. The Shadim are the Shed are a bit higher than that too. I think the Shed might be 17. But like a lot of the the generic non-sacred summons are like 17 MR.
Yeah, Ocelotls are 16. Shadim are 17. And Seer are 15.
They're 15. Okay. For some reason, I remembered it being a little lower, but
well, in magic scales, it would be 14.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see their bless. Yeah, we don't see any Seer here, but yeah, and I mean that's pretty high when you put like anti-magic on, but those few points actually matter a lot when you're talking about big Master and Slave casts. Yeah. So these kind of stacks are going to be vulnerable to just getting wholesale stolen by Pan in the deep late game, I think. It's one of the reasons I'm like bullish on Pan. Like I'm going to put my money. I'll say it right here. I'm putting my money on Pan right now.
Yeah, I'm actually in the same boat, mostly because of the diplomacy coup that he's pulled. Where like even the people that are fighting him seem to have a fairly high opinion of him, which is very unusual. Typically, if you're in a front-running position, you'll have at least some people with bad will towards you, but everyone seems to like him.
Yeah, he seems just really chipper. I think English might be a second language, so he doesn't like speak great English, but he's like super friendly and like, I don't know. Just I think it's pretty. I definitely have stuff to learn there. I get pissed at people and burn bridges. So
Yeah, it's just a charismatic dude.
yeah. Okay. So I think we've covered this part of the TNG war. What is this down here? A dryad. Oh, this is actually really funny. So there's a smattering of TNG shit like at random places, like here and here. Do you know what these are from?
The magic scale?
No, like this guy's these dryad hoplites.
Not sure, no.
There's a few more in different places. So when he did that big vortex of returning thing, people are starting to trickle
Oh.
back from the void.
Oh. So they're coming back into random provinces.
Coming back into random provinces. So
I
that's
honestly
pretty
thought
funny.
that when a unit was lost to the void, it was just gone forever. I knew that commanders could attack random provinces, but I didn't know that units could pop up in random provinces as well.
Apparently that's what's happening. I don't know how common it is or whatnot, but they were talking about it in the game chat.
I thought that they were just gone forever, but that's really cool. I don't think I've ever seen that. Because like
we might have a fight here.
Like I've definitely lost guys to Stygian Pass before, but I've never had them come back.
Oh man, so Gath is sending a harmonica golem here against. Wait, what is this?
That's the harmonica golem. Yep.
Okay. What is it? Oh, this is for increased range. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Spell range. Typically, you see the astral version of that item rather than the unique version, but it can also cast horror mark off script, which is useful for targeting the horrors. But
yeah.
It at least
Okay.
for burn gems, but it didn't do a lot of
So
damage.
this was the second gem bait here. So this first one burned gems. And let's take a look at this battle. This first, so it's a double casting of Ghost Riders.
Yeah, that's kind of the efficient gem version of burning gems. If you cast horrors, actually, they join the Ghost Riders because the independents team up together. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I remember Arco did that to me in the last tournament.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You know, it's a change. It used to be the horrors would even infight amongst themselves.
Yeah, that only horrors with the same unit ID were on a team. Now all horrors and independent units are on the same side.
So I want to look at this first battle to see what all got cast, because this isn't just one gem bait. This is two gem baits. So we've got Relief up, we've got Blood Rain, we've got Wailing Winds, we've got Quagmire, and we've got Stygian Rain. And then on the units, they've got the Stygian Rain buff, Regen, and Luck, and PR.
Okay, yeah.
And this may be...
Mass Flight as well.
Yeah, okay, and Mass Flight. And then we're going to take a look here at this battle.
This is after both gem baits.
This is after both gem baits. And let's see if all these things went off.
There's also some magic duels going off there.
This also gives you a sense like that Gath was sending the golem over here, how close this... You get little hints through the game of how tight alliances actually are. Like sometimes it's just people not fighting each other, right? And it's like, okay. But these guys are like actively working together.
I mean, Vetti did also drop on Erythia. So like,
yeah,
you know, the other side is at least doing the magic phase stuff.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Okay, so we've got Firestorm up. Solar Brilliance has been cast by the Centaur Sages, which is good for them because these guys have Spirit Sight, so it's very likely that TNG would do Darkness. And then they also have Recuperation.
Yeah, and he did get Will of the Fates at least, so that's something.
Yeah. So Will of the Fates is up. Mass Regen's also up. Firestorm, Astral Tempest. Oh, Astral Tempest got cast also. Ah, damn. Relief. Both sides have cast Relief. So some of the things didn't go up. I don't think Stygian Rains went off. What was the other things that got cast? It was...
You mean that had previously been cast?
Yeah.
It was so Will of the Fates, Mass Flight,
yeah, Serpent's Blessing hasn't gone off.
Yeah, Serpent's Blessing, Mass Regen.
Did.
And then there were some battlefield spells, so Blood Rain, Wailing Winds, I think.
Yeah, Wailing Winds looks like it didn't cast either. And Blood Rain didn't cast. So that's actually really important.
Your mod, the temp gem thing, put in a temp dgem item thing, which TNG should be using.
Right. And that would be enough to get Wailing Winds off.
Yeah.
Things like Darkness and stuff, you need like one of the higher powered items, but
No, the higher power item is 3 death gems, I believe.
oh. I mean, there's one, I think, a casket that's like 25 death gems that gives you 4. But the other one, the water death one, is only like, 3 death and 3 water with the hammer. But that's 2 death gems, which is not enough for Darkness, but...
Wait, wasn't the casket only 3? Was the casket 4?
The casket, I think, is 4.
Oh, well, that's enough for every death gem, for every death battle.
But it's expensive, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they should have it. And, I mean, they're just complete... I think the thing is...
Does the TNG side not have Army of Gold?
No, I don't know if they have it. They definitely haven't cast it. They didn't put any protection buffs up. Or they only did one. Their only protection buff was Stygian Rain. And that didn't get cast.
Well, that wouldn't have helped, though, against the Firestorm. Because the Firestorm is what's really doing the work in this fight.
Right.
It surprises me because I feel like TNG is a nation that can fairly easily drop Army of Gold in every battle.
Yeah. I mean, here they would have to... I think, they had that big battle they lost against Pangea with the Vortex of Returning. The real loss wasn't the mages. The real loss was the items. And they had... I think that army did have a bunch of the,
Temp gem items.
temp gem items, and they could afford to like fight into this multiple gem bait thing. But the thing is actually making an army that's resistant to this many gem baits is actually really expensive. Like you can't have many of them.
Yeah, but I just mean that in terms of just casting Army of Gold. If they didn't cast it at all, then that's kind of a big deal because like TNG should have relatively easy access to numerous Earth 2s.
Yeah.
So that should be something that they can pretty easily drop reliably. So the fact that they don't have that here is actually very telling. Because the Ancestor Smiths, I believe, can actually pretty easily get up to like the level where they just drop it in every battle.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So lacking that, like that was the real teller of this fight, was the Firestorm.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit... I think they would have won without it. I mean, we've seen what this many Centaur Sages do. But the real thing, I think, to me, is the counterplay from TNG was the morale play, right? Because, these guys have great morale, but with Wailing Winds and Blood Rain, these guys will be fucking running real quick. They've got the hostile Dominion thing. These guys are going to be piecing out. And that just got negated by this gem burn. So...
Yeah, between
golf clap, though, for Pangea.
Play, yeah, between lacking the morale play and lacking the protection against Firestorm, what could have been a pretty close fight became very, very one-sided.
Yeah. It's kind of a callback to that last Vettihheim battle, This army would have just mopped, I think Mass Flight didn't go off. So this army, which was 100 gem, are these guys 2 or 3 gems?
They're two, but TNG summons them for 1.
Okay.
Because he's been summoning them at that end discount site.
Okay, so 53 gems of cubes, which is normally like 100 gems of cubes. Like this army would have, in a casual multiplayer game, would have just demolished most Dominions players, right? Like, these guys would have had regen and luck, and they would have been flying and eating everything, and the battle would have been over in like 3 or 4 turns. And then the coordinated gem bait, the double gem bait, and then this army just gets crushed and doesn't even like suffer any attrition. So, Dominions.
Yeah, honestly, like you've been pointing out, I think you mentioned that at Gath's army when we'd been talking about it before. Like we had thought that it was like something that Vettihheim could actually take on, but you were saying like, in a normal game, you look at this army and it's just like, GG, I can't kill that. And I agree with that in that what we're seeing in this finals in terms of like the armies that are being deployed would absolutely, like most of the armies that are actually being used, any sort of serious army that's being fielded would be enough to crush like most open lobbies. And it really does speak to like the level of Dominions that we're watching, that these things are being killed so quickly. So like even though it was a stomp and Pangea absolutely wiped the floor with this TNG army, like this isn't because, TNG isn't a good player or that they don't have enough stuff, because in most settings that army would be a death ball.
Yeah. The other thing too is it's kind of what I mentioned about the temp gem items and like they're expensive and you can't have them on all your armies easily. especially if you're doing a ton of buffs. And it's like that kind of gets to the strategy here, which is like just the pressure that TNG's having to resist. They're being pulled in all these directions, and the demands that are being made militarily on TNG. Okay, you need to fight this, you need to fight this, you need to fight this. And then as they're trying to allocate their resources, it's like an impossible, it's like a boat with like 5 holes and you've only got 3 corks. And then you end up being like, okay, well, we'll fight this, but we'll do it without the temp gem items or whatever. And then it just gets, yeah. So
yeah, TNG was really reliant on those, and he'd actually pointed that out himself in that like his big advantage previously, like in the last war versus Pan, and just like in his wars in general, has been that TNG brings everything to the field, and he brings armies that are fully prepared and fully decked out, and that they have all the gems. But as you pointed out, these temp gem items are a very important component of that, and he can't afford that many extras. So losing those items in the big battle where Pangea just like dropped the bomb and returned out, that hurt him a lot. And we're seeing the impacts of that now. Like it isn't just that, he lost that
I like
one
what
army.
you call it. I like drop the bomb. This does have like going nuclear vibes to it.
Yeah. So but losing that one battle didn't just, cost him that one battle and what, that the damages from there, but it also carries on in that now he's still suffering from that because he doesn't have those items available.
Yeah. A little pile of garbage here on this fort. Some counter raiding. Patrolling out some scouts. Duke comes in, most likely an air elemental dude. Just check. I think that's what this guy is. He probably got shot. Oh. An Evo thug? Does this work?
No.
But these guys are rare. You don't want to do this with your air 2s. You don't get that many of them.
That's a mistake. Maybe he was meant to do an air elemental and didn't get the gems?
Huh.
Like that's flat out a mistake, because that doesn't beat most PD.
These air 2 Ducados are not common. You have to get...
It's a 50% random out of a quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So... Well, these, it's 20% and then half of that. So it's, I guess 10% of them are. Is that right? Yeah. It's 10%. So I guess you'll have enough of them. I mean, you won't have enough. You'll never have enough air 2s as a 10% random. But you do have a decent number, but it will never feel like enough.
It's 1 out of 8, so yeah, slightly more than 10%. It's 50% by 1 over 4. So yeah, that's 1 over 8.
Wait, I thought there were 5 paths.
Oh, you're right.
It's 5?
You're right. No, you're right.
Okay.
You're right. It is 10%. For some reason, I thought it was only 4.
So that's that. I think we've covered TNG. Let's go see if anything happens with Vettiheim here. So Vettiheim, he's moved the main army on top of Utgard, and it's popped. He's done some light raiding here with the... Let's see what he's putting on his Malak.
Yeah, we've seen these before. These are the absolute budget Malakim. It's kind of how I think you should use them.
And he's doing interesting thugging here with enlarge and regen on these guys. So they've got 20% regen. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty heavy raid, actually. I mean, this...
Yeah,
you're going to have a small army here.
Fair.
Yeah. Okay, scouts getting patrolled out. Vettiheim holding up in their capital. There wasn't anything over here on the Arithia front, really. Small army on top of this. Small army on top of this. I think that's it. I mean, we got one cool battle this turn. I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, and even like where we didn't get like a major battle, we still actually got to see like pretty decent force commitments from everyone, both in terms of like, these raiding parties which we're talking about, and the just continuing pressure against Vettiheim as Gath continues to conquer their land. So like, it's not like people have turned off the gas. It's just that we haven't had that conflux that we'd seen last turn.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was saying, I think Pan's in position 1. I still do, but Gath is ahead pretty significantly in provinces at the moment.
Yeah.
That actually could work in Pan's favor, because TNG kind of is I was saying that they're probably doing too much fear mongering. But the thing they're mostly harping about is Gath. So TNG's kind of setting Gath up to be the next coalition target, which I think the real position one is Pangaea right now.
So I sort of agree with you in that I think that the real position one is Pangaea right now, but not because of their like flat advantage, but mostly because of the diplomacy situation. And that kind of goes back to what we talked about with Arco way back when, in that Arco was for a very long time like the largest nation in terms of like their province count that they were the first nation to get 3 capitals. So from many like measurements, they had looked like they were in a very commanding position. But their diplomatic situation was such that they weren't really in a position to continue to advance without fighting multiple other players. And with Pangaea, I kind of see them in the opposite state, where Gath is in many ways ahead of Pangaea, but Pangaea has collected a large amount of goodwill to the point that like they're more so than other players, I would say, able to pretty easily get together a coalition in their favor, and they're very unlikely to be on the smaller side of an XV1.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. Looking at the graphs, though, Pangaea is top of a lot of them. So Gath is number 1 in provinces, with a reasonably distant position 2 for Pan, and then Xibalba and Erythia right behind that. I mean, Erythia is not small.
Yeah, Erythia retakes a fair bit of ground.
Yeah. Forts, Pangaea is way ahead, and then we've got TNG and Gath next. Income, Pangaea number 1 by a healthy margin. That's a solid, maybe 15% above Gath, probably largely due to Gath blood hunting, and then everybody else. With Xibalba very low, right? And this is definitely due to blood hunting, because Xibalba's in the same pack as TNG and Erythia in terms of province count, are ahead of TNG right now, but in income, he's just punished. So very poor. And that's one of the differences. Like he may have a similar blood economy to Gath, but he's got half of the gold economy. And then gym income is Xibalba lowest after Vettihheim, who's dying. And then we've got these guys, and then Pan number 1 by 10%, maybe a little less. Research, Pan finished. Erythia is about to finish. Gath will probably finish in about 15 turns.
Yeah, I would say that at this point, research is no longer a serious factor in terms of like the strength of nations, because as you pointed out, like Gath is probably going to finish, but even what they're missing is probably going to be lower impact than the earlier research, because like once you get into those like last level 9s, they're going to be much lower value than the stuff that you've been working towards before then.
Well, it's definitely still relevant for Vettihheim and TNG and Xibalba.
Oh, sure, yeah. I just mean in terms of like the top 3 in research, like I don't think that Gath is going to be significantly behind.
These are the same.
Yeah.
But Xibalba with a massive tech debt. Now you can see that it's starting to inflect up here.
We've kind of been talking about Xibalba's massive tech debt for I feel like most of the game at this point. But yeah,
it's a long story. But it hasn't fixed itself yet. But also looking at this, I don't think TNG had Alt 9. So I don't think Army of Gold was in the cards for them. It's possible they could have 1-9 by this point, but I don't know. It's very likely they don't have it.
And they're certainly not spamming the 9s.
Yeah. Dominion, Gath, position 1. TNG, strangely, in position 2 still. And then
Dominion doesn't go away right away. So like even if you're
right.
bleeding territory, if you were top of Dominion, you're probably going to remain there.
Yeah. It's actually going up, though, which is wild.
I mean,
it's on an upward trajectory. Normally, it'll lag your province count, but his province count, it's been bleeding for about 8 turns. Yeah, maybe that's fair.
Yeah, because like you kind of need temples to affect Dominion, and TNG needs temples for all their mages. So like their Dominion's going to be the last to go.
Yeah, I guess Pan might not have been building that many temples, because Centaur sages aren't sacred, are they?
Nope.
Yeah,
they are not.
So it looks like he's been backfilling. I doubt he put them there initially, but most all the forts have temples now.
They do get discounted temples, I believe.
Right.
But like for Pangaea, that's basically just like free econ on top of all of your other cheap stuff.
Yeah. Dominion Gath, this is almost certainly this uptrend, this steady, like constant uptrend. Some of this is like, okay, Vettiheim's Dominion's getting pushed back as his armies advance and stuff, but this almost certainly is blood sacking. So
Well, we did know that actually because prior to the Vettiheim War, or rather in the build-up to it while their nap was ticking down, Gath had been aggressively blood sacking along their border.
right. So that's taking effect, and that is one of the major late game advantages that Gath can have over everybody else in the game, is he can have a way stronger Dominion push than everybody else. So
Right. From blood sacrifice. Well,
Right.
Shabalba too, but
yeah. Does Zavala get blood sack?
yeah. They get blood sack in all 3 eras, I believe.
Bullshit. Is that right? Damn. Yeah, can't perform blood sacrifices. Hot damn. I don't think I knew that.
They're primary blood nation, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Army size, another important graph. This one's actually kind of tricky to read. So we've got Zabalba and Gath, both position, 2 and 1. And then we've got TNG, and Arithia is the lowest of all the remaining players, aside from like Vettiheim.
And that kind of makes sense from what we've seen, that their armies
Right.
kind of haven't been building up, and the armies that they have been sending out have been getting nuked by the statue drops and so on.
Right. But it doesn't look like he's trying to buy his way out of that problem, right? So far, it's just more piles of human mages. And what's interesting here is that's also basically the same strategy Pan has. But Pan's mages aren't nearly as vulnerable to getting cheesed as Arithia's are.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of commented on that before, that the big thing with the Center Sages is that they're just kind of better in every way than humans. And a big part of that is that HP.
Yeah. So pretty interesting. I mean, we definitely see kind of runaway production growth with Gath and Zabalba, and that is important. But I'm not sure how. I mean, if Pan gets outplayed, they're in trouble. But if they, if they can steal 200 or 300 demons, they're going to be pretty money. They can catch up on this army graph real quick. Have a few big steals.
Indeed, yeah. Master and Slave does have that effect.
Yeah. I guess if you break siege out of a fort and you trigger a horror battle, will you get a battle in the normal phase?
No.
With the break siege army?
No,
or like
Send
in the
Horror
magic
triggers a
phase?
magic attack.
What's that?
Send Horror triggers a magic attack.
No, I guess what I mean is you send horror on top. Okay, so let's imagine this Agarthan army is on top. There's no. Okay, imagine this was like a Pangean fort, and Agarth is on top of it, and Pangea has 100 sages inside that are breaking siege, and they cast Send Horror on their own fort. So the Send Horror will hit the Agarthan army,
Yes.
but does that trigger the TNG army to also have a magic phase attack?
What TNG army? Oh, the break siege
Or
is
not
after
TNG,
normal
the
phase.
Pangean army.
Break siege is after normal phase movement, or break siege is a normal phase move battle. It's not like stealth.
Right, but it's not like stealth. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that would be the real thing. Because it could be hard to like.
Break siege actually is special in one way, in that if other people are moving onto the fort, like let's say 3 nations are all attacking the same fort, break siege is guaranteed to be last.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. But yeah, so quick look at the score graphs. What are your closing thoughts here, Si?
I mean,
aren't
we've
changing too much episode to episode, but
Oh no, yeah, no, I think that we've kind of covered it in terms of like our power rankings, in that I think that Gath, by many of the like objective rankings in terms of as a solo power, is probably the strongest nation right now. But in terms of their game state, just based on the goodwill that they have from the other players and based on the perceived threat of the other nations in the game, I think that Pangea is actually ahead of Gath in terms of likelihood to win, just because I think that when it comes down to it, other nations are going to be willing to help fight Gath more so than they would want to team up on Pan.
yeah. I think that's a pretty good summary. I'm actually bullish on Pan in a 1v1 matchup against Gath too, but a lot of that depends on exactly how they play. But I also don't think that's likely to happen. I think these two are going to have each other's back while they knock at least one more player out of the game.
Agreed. Yeah. I do think that in the 1v1, I actually favor Gath a little bit more than you do, I think, just because they also can do like really good magic stuff, but then on top of that, they have the advantage of these elite sacred demons.
Yeah.
And of course the Shadim, the non-sacred storm demons. So like between the two, they have more and better elite units than Pangea, while also having pretty decent mage support.
I want to just add something to this at this point, which is that this is not, I have not seen this play style before where it's like, I'm going to roll, because normally these armies you would like nuke from orbit with like flames from the sky or something. Like there's a reason you don't see 100 mages in an army because they get nuked from orbit. And I think that actually when you see this many Centaur Sages, it's still the right move to do.
Yeah, you just need like 3, or you need 4.
Four probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 plus flames from the sky to get a decent number of kills. But at that point, I agree, it is worth it.
Yeah, but if you have forecasters to do it, I think you should put and the gems. It's worth it. So anyway, there's a reason you don't normally see it, but and it's that. But these Centaur Sages are so cheap. They're probably like one of the cheapest high HP mages that you actually can get away with doing this. And of course, they're super useful. I don't think the meta has like absorbed, or like the normal Dominions player or me. I haven't absorbed like all the ways something like this could play out. And there's crazy shit, Sai. Like against the Gath, let's say you put up demonic cleansing and you have the air guys and they're doing shimmering field. Like, holy shit, it's gonna be a lot of damage.
Yeah, no, like
20 shimmering fields turn 1. Like, I don't even know what that looks like. It's crazy.
Well, you can't do turn 1 without matrices, but yeah.
Right. And who knows what happens when you put gems on these guys and put them on advance and cast. Like maybe they're gonna do, I don't even know what mages with gems on them on advance and cast they're gonna do off script. Like, will they do shimmering fields? Will they do, what are the other paths they get?
Earth, water, air, nature.
Earth, water, air, nature. So air, shimmering fields. Water, you get Nifl Flames, which is pretty good. This is armor negating damage. Then nature, there's no nature equivalent. Storm of Thorns actually probably isn't horrible.
Storm of Thorns is closest indeed, but still nowhere near the same level.
And then, I mean, Rain of Stones actually is probably, well, no. I was gonna say it might be good with demonic cleansing. I don't know if it's enough damage though.
Rain of Stones is good as an anti-communion spell. I don't think that it's good as something that Pangea would cast, but Pangea also doesn't get the cross path for it.
Yeah. So I think the big one here is actually Shimmering Fields, but also maybe Nifl Flames. But like, you have these guys like blasting out these huge spells. Who knows? And range 40. You put range boosters on this because this also can be affected by water lenses, which are really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And then the area of effect goes up. That's not going to matter much as you communion boost. It'll matter some, but yeah, like huge Nifl Flames with the water lens. So actually, with the water lens, you only have to put 1 extra gem on there, and they can cast it. And then you're going to get a 25 range boost, which will put it where you can hit the back line if you are forward positioned. So, yeah, that could be wild. In conjunction with demonic cleansing, 20 armor negating cold damage.
Yeah, I would say though that we most likely wouldn't expect to see this sort of play as a round 1 move. That they'll probably only like if they're doing this is probably only after they set up the communion. So you do at least get the
probably
advantage.
round 2.
Yeah, so you do at least get the advantage of your what you call them?
Will of Fates.
Yeah. And your similar battlefield wide protection stuff.
What's Gath's Bless again? Do we see it this turn?
Gath has resistances and very minimal stats. And that had kind of been like my critique of them earlier, but it seems to be working out well for them.
Yeah. I'm wondering how much cold resistance they have and how much shock. They have high shock resistance. If I recall. Like 15.
Right. They do have shock resist. Yeah. And that's both.
So Shimmering Fields might not work. But
it also helps to protect against friendly fire from the Shadim.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sai.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting.
And viewers, if you made it to the end, we thank you. See you guys next time.